we can talk to Agnia Grigas, author of Politics of Energy and Memory Between the Baltic States and Russia, joining us from Los Angeles. Welcome to Biz Asia America. One of the stories we talked about earlier was Mastercard and Visa essentially stopping to do business with some of the Russian banks. Walk us through perhaps how this might impact business.
Well, first of all, sanctions on the Russian economy via private business will have a much greater impact than sanctions on Kremlin. I mean, we've already seen that Vladimir Putin, doesn't really care what the West thinks. So if you start putting more pressure on Russian businesses and Russian business elites, they could in turn put pressure on Putin and the Kremlin to stop isolating Russia essentially in the international arena. And also, if President Obama does enact further sanctions on the Russian oil and gas sector, which accounts for the majority of Russia's exports and revenue, this could be, a much more powerful move than any sort of type of sanctions against Kremlin.
When the G7 meets next week, what do you think might be the goals of leaders, or perhaps what they hope to accomplish?
Well, they will certainly be talking about Crimea and Ukraine, and they will try to coordinate a response to Russia, coordinate potential sanctions. But I think this coordination will be very difficult because the G7 member states, a lot of them have different interests vis-a-vis Russia. They do a different level of business and different level of finances with Russia. I think another subject in the conversation will be whether to permanently expel Russia from G8. And Russia only joined in 1998, and some have really questioned whether Russia belongs in this elite club.
If that discussion comes up of what you're talking about, what might likely be the reaction from President Putin?
President Putin has certainly, been trying to put on a strong show, and of course he will, critique any sort of decision to isolate Russia, but there would be very little he could actually do.
Now, President Putin is turning to China and Japan, perhaps looking for some trade deals. Is there a potential for a more East versus West moment, and how might the EU or the US react if these trade deals do get announced?
Well, certainly China and Japan are very interested in economic cooperation with Russia. And while Japan has sided politically with the U.S., economically it would prefer not to put sanctions against Russia. And also Japanese investors would be very interested in coordinating with Russian companies to explore and exploit Russian oil and gas reserves. Similarly, China, they're interested in doing a deal with Gazprom to receive gas supplies next month or in May. But I think, the U.S. still has a card to play here, and the U.S. oil shale revolution and LNG technologies do give China and Japan more options of having access to American gas rather than just Gazprom's gas.
Earlier this week on Monday, the markets had its first chance to react to some of the sanctions from the United States, and of course we got further details from Europe later on. The markets seemed to be fairly okay with it. And then Russia came with their sanctions as well. And that brings us to Friday. What are investors, or perhaps even business people, most worried about right now?
Well, I think they worry about the escalation of this, that this is becoming a type of tit-for-tat game of sanctions that will not end. And Putin doesn't look like he's going to back down on this, even if this is going to hurt the Russian economy. Now, if President Obama decides to push ahead with oil and gas sanctions against Russia, this could certainly have an impact on the global economy. So I think investors are worried about that, about this really escalating.
All right. Author Agnia Grigas joining us live from Los Angeles on the impact of sanctions. Thank you very much.